Let us begin with fact 1. It reveals something beautiful about the relationship between sleep learning and intuition. Your unconscious mind processes approximately 11 million bits of information per second, while your conscious mind can handle only about 40 to 50 bits per second. During sleep, when your conscious mind steps aside, this vast unconscious processing power becomes the dominant force in your mental landscape. Information absorbed during sleep bypasses the critical filters of your conscious mind and plants itself directly into your intuitive knowledge base. A study from Northwestern University found that people exposed to problem-solving strategies during sleep showed enhanced intuitive decision-making the following day, even though they couldn't consciously recall hearing the information. You're developing a deeper wisdom that feels like it comes from within, because it does. Fact 2 brings us to the fascinating realm of what scientists call targeted memory reactivation. Researchers have discovered that specific memories can be strengthened during sleep by presenting associated cues. In one elegant experiment, people learned the locations of objects while hearing specific sounds. When those same sounds were played during subsequent sleep, the participants showed dramatically improved recall of the object locations. This suggests that when you listen to thematic content during sleep, whether about confidence, creativity, health, or wisdom, you're creating associative networks that your brain will automatically strengthen. The content becomes woven into the fabric of your memory, accessible whenever you need it. Fact 3 explores the role of glymphatic system activity during sleep, a discovery that earned its researchers significant acclaim in neuroscience. During deep sleep, the space between your brain cells expands by up to 60%, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flood through neural tissue and wash away metabolic waste products, including beta-amyloid proteins that are associated with cognitive decline. This process is up to 10 times more active during sleep than during waking hours. The University of Rochester Medical Center, which made this discovery, compared it to a dishwasher for your brain. When you pair this nightly cleansing with enriching audio content, you're not just clearing out the old, you're simultaneously installing the new. Your brain is literally becoming cleaner, healthier, and more receptive to wisdom as you sleep. Fact 4 brings this chapter to a close with perhaps the most empowering insight of all: the cumulative power of consistent sleep learning. Neuroplasticity works on the principle of neurons that fire together, wire together, a concept articulated by neuroscientist Donald Hebb. Each night that you fall asleep to enriching content, you're reinforcing the same positive neural pathways. Research on habit formation has shown that changes to brain structure can be observed in as little as 8 weeks of consistent practice. By making sleep learning a regular part of your routine, you're not creating a single moment of change, you're initiating a continuous transformation. Night after night, week after week, your brain is reshaping itself, building a mind that naturally gravitates toward wisdom, calm, and capability. As you continue to rest, know that the deepest work is happening now in these quiet hours, where science and sleep converge to create something extraordinary. A better, wiser, more capable version of yourself, emerging one peaceful night at a time. This is where sleep learning becomes life learning. Fact 5 illuminates something profound about the architecture of your sleep cycles. Your night is not one continuous state, but rather a carefully orchestrated symphony of different stages, each lasting approximately 90 to 110 minutes. Within each cycle, you move from light stage 1 sleep, through stage 2 with its protective spindles, into the deep restoration of slow-wave sleep, and finally into the vivid creativity of REM. What's remarkable is that each type of learning benefits from different stages. Factual information consolidates best during slow-wave sleep, emotional learning during REM, and procedural skills during stage 2. When you listen to varied content throughout the night, your brain automatically routes different types of information to the optimal processing stage. Research from the Max Planck Institute has shown that the brain demonstrates a sophisticated routing intelligence, sending different categories of information to different sleep stages for optimal consolidation. You don't need to micromanage this process. Your brain's ancient wisdom knows exactly what to do. Fact 6 reveals something extraordinary about the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which plays a starring role in your nighttime learning journey. During waking hours and REM sleep, acetylcholine levels are high, facilitating attention and memory encoding. During slow-wave sleep, levels drop significantly, allowing for memory consolidation. But here's what's fascinating. The rhythmic oscillation between high and low acetylcholine levels across the night creates what neuroscientists call a neurochemical bath that optimizes both the encoding of new memories and their integration with old ones. Research from New York University has demonstrated that this acetylcholine oscillation is essential for transforming experiences into lasting knowledge. When you provide gentle auditory input during sleep, you're working in harmony with this natural neurochemical rhythm, allowing information to be absorbed and consolidated in the most efficient way possible. Fact 7 takes us into the realm of stress reduction and mental resilience. During sleep, your brain processes and neutralizes the emotional charge of stressful experiences through a mechanism involving reduced amygdala activity coupled with increased medial prefrontal cortex engagement. This process, sometimes called overnight therapy, allows you to wake up feeling less disturbed by yesterday's challenges. A study from UC Berkeley found that after a night of quality sleep, people showed up to 20% less emotional reactivity to disturbing images. When you layer calming, wisdom-filled content into this natural stress reduction process, you're essentially giving your brain positive material to work with. Instead of merely processing stress, your brain is simultaneously building new neural pathways associated with calm, confidence, and capability. You're not just recovering from the day, you're actively constructing a more resilient mind. Fact 8 introduces the fascinating concept of sleep-dependent abstraction, your brain's ability to extract general rules and patterns from specific examples during sleep. While you're awake, you tend to remember specific details and concrete experiences. But during sleep, particularly during REM and late-night stage 2 sleep, your brain steps back and identifies underlying principles. Researchers at Harvard found that people who slept after learning showed superior ability to extract grammatical rules from artificial language examples compared to those who stayed awake. This means that when you fall asleep listening to life wisdom, philosophical insights, or practical strategies, your sleeping brain doesn't just memorize the words. It extracts the deeper principles and integrates them into your worldview. You wake up not just knowing more but understanding more deeply. Fact 9 reveals the powerful connection between sleep learning and your circadian rhythms, the 24-hour biological clock governed by the suprachiasmatic nucleus in your hypothalamus. This internal clock doesn't just control when you feel sleepy. It orchestrates the release of hormones, the regulation of body temperature, and even the timing of when your brain is most receptive to different types of learning. Research has shown that the deepest slow-wave sleep, where factual learning consolidates most effectively, occurs predominantly in the first half of the night, while REM sleep, where emotional and creative integration happens, dominates the second half. Core body temperature drops to its lowest point around 4 to 5 a.m., and this cooling is associated with enhanced memory consolidation. By establishing a consistent sleep learning routine, you're aligning your learning with these natural rhythms, allowing your circadian system to anticipate and prepare for the nightly wisdom absorption. Your body learns when to optimize itself for growth. Fact 10 explores something called prospective memory, your ability to remember to do things in the future, and how sleep enhances this crucial life skill. While retrospective memory helps you recall the past, prospective memory helps you remember your intentions, goals, and commitments. Research from Washington University in St. Louis has found that sleep, particularly slow-wave sleep, significantly enhances prospective memory by strengthening the neural networks that link cues in your environment to intended actions. When you listen to content about goals, habits, or personal growth during sleep, you're strengthening these prospective memory networks. Your brain becomes better at remembering not just information but intention, better at following through on the person you want to become. Fact 11 illuminates the role of sleep in immune function and whole body learning. During sleep, your immune system releases cytokines, proteins that help fight infection and inflammation. Growth hormone, secreted primarily during deep sleep, doesn't just help children grow. In adults, it aids in tissue repair, muscle building, and maintaining healthy body composition. The vagus nerve, which connects your brain to your heart, lungs, and digestive system, shows increased parasympathetic activity during sleep, promoting healing throughout your body. When you fall asleep to content about health, vitality, and well-being, you're not just learning intellectually, you're sending signals through your entire nervous system that reinforce physical health. Mind and body learn together in perfect unity throughout the night. Fact 12 opens a window into one of sleep's most practical gifts: enhanced problem-solving ability. Throughout history, great thinkers have reported breakthrough insights upon waking. Dmitri Mendeleev dreaming the periodic table, August Kekulé visualizing the structure of benzene, and countless others experiencing what psychologists call the incubation effect. Modern neuroscience has revealed the mechanism behind these moments of genius. During sleep, particularly during REM, your brain engages in what researchers at Lancaster University call memory consolidation with recombination. Your sleeping mind takes apart problems, examines the pieces independently, and reassembles them in novel configurations. Functional MRI studies show that brain regions that weren't communicating during waking problem-solving suddenly begin exchanging information during sleep. When you fall asleep with enriching content about challenges, strategies, or new perspectives, you're giving your brain high-quality raw material for this nightly recombination process. You're literally sleeping on it, and science confirms this is one of the smartest things you can do. Fact 13 reveals something called memory reconsolidation, a process that fundamentally changes how we understand learning itself. For years, scientists believed that once a memory was consolidated, it became fixed and permanent. But research from New York University has demonstrated that each time you recall a memory, it becomes temporarily unstable and must be reconsolidated. During sleep, this reconsolidation process occurs naturally, and here's what's remarkable. The memory that gets stored isn't an exact copy of the original. It's updated, refined, and integrated with new information. When you listen to wisdom-filled content during sleep, you're not just adding new memories, you're actively updating and improving existing ones. Your past is literally being rewritten to serve your future. Old limiting beliefs can be reconsolidated into empowering truths. Yesterday's confusion can be reconsolidated into today's clarity. Fact 14 brings us to the prefrontal cortex, the crown jewel of human evolution located just behind your forehead. This region, responsible for decision-making, planning, and self-control, is highly sensitive to sleep quality. Research from the Sleep and Neuroimaging Laboratory at UC Berkeley has shown that even a single night of poor sleep reduces prefrontal cortex activity by up to 30%, leading to impulsive decisions and poor judgment. Conversely, quality sleep enhances prefrontal functioning, improving your ability to make decisions aligned with your long-term goals rather than immediate impulses. When you combine restorative sleep with content about wisdom, values, and intentional living, You're strengthening the very neural networks that help you become the person you aspire to be. Your prefrontal cortex awakens each morning more capable, more aligned, more you. Fact 15 explores the mirror neuron system and social learning during sleep. Mirror neurons, discovered by Italian neuroscientist Giacomo Rizzolatti, fire both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing it. This system is fundamental to learning through observation and empathy. Remarkably, studies have shown that the mirror neuron system remains active during certain sleep stages, particularly during REM sleep when you're processing social and emotional memories. When you listen to stories of wisdom, descriptions of positive behaviors, or accounts of personal growth during sleep, your mirror neuron system activates as if you were experiencing these things yourself. Research from the University of Chicago has demonstrated that mental rehearsal during sleep can improve skill performance nearly as much as physical practice. You're not just learning about wisdom, you're neurologically experiencing it, creating the neural patterns that make those behaviors feel natural and intuitive when you're awake. Fact 16 illuminates the role of serotonin in your nighttime learning journey. Serotonin, often called the happiness molecule, plays a complex dance with your sleep cycles. During waking hours and the lightest stages of sleep, serotonin helps modulate mood and attention. As you descend into deeper sleep, serotonin levels decline, allowing other neurotransmitters to orchestrate memory consolidation. But here's what's beautiful. The neurons that produce serotonin, located in the raphe nuclei of your brainstem, are exquisitely sensitive to the emotional tone of your environment. When you fall asleep listening to calm, positive, uplifting content, these neurons are primed to support mood regulation and emotional well-being throughout the following day. Studies from the University of Pittsburgh have shown that positive emotional content processed during sleep is associated with increased serotonin function upon waking, contributing to better mood, improved stress resilience, and enhanced social connection. Your nighttime learning becomes tomorrow's emotional foundation. Fact 17 takes us into the fascinating realm of habit formation and the basal ganglia, a collection of structures deep in your brain that automate learned behaviors. When you first learn a new behavior, it requires conscious effort and engages your prefrontal cortex. But with repetition, particularly when that repetition is reinforced during sleep, the behavior gradually transfers to the basal ganglia, becoming automatic. Research from MIT has shown that during sleep, the basal ganglia replay patterns of neural activity associated with new habits, strengthening them with each repetition. This is why sleeping after practicing a new skill or behavior significantly enhances its retention. When you listen to content about positive habits, healthy routines, or empowering behaviors during sleep, you're activating these same consolidation processes. Your brain is quite literally programming positive patterns into your automatic behavior systems. The person you want to become isn't just a distant goal, they're being installed line by line, night by night into your neural operating system. Fact 18 reveals the profound connection between sleep, learning, and what neuroscientists call cognitive flexibility, your ability to adapt your thinking and behavior to new situations. The anterior cingulate cortex and dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which are central to cognitive flexibility, show enhanced connectivity after quality sleep. Studies from the University of Michigan have demonstrated that people who get adequate sleep perform up to 50% better on tasks requiring mental flexibility and creative problem solving. Sleep essentially resets your mental models, making you less rigid and more open to new perspectives. When you combine this natural reset with enriching content about growth, adaptability, and openness, you're not just becoming more flexible, you're directing that flexibility toward wisdom. You wake up not just more adaptable, but more wisely adaptable, able to flow with life's changes while staying true to your deepest values. Fact 19 brings us to the role of dreams themselves in your learning journey. Dreams, particularly during REM sleep, are not random neural noise. They're your brain's creative studio, where memories, emotions, and imagination blend into new configurations. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker describes dreams as overnight therapy and creativity incubation chambers. The content of your dreams is influenced by what you experience before sleep. Research published in the journal Sleep has shown that people exposed to specific themes before sleeping often incorporate those themes into their dreams, and this incorporation correlates with better memory for that material. When you fall asleep listening to content about growth, wisdom, and positive transformation, you're seeding your dream world with these themes. Your dreams become allies in your transformation, working through challenges, rehearsing new behaviors, and integrating wisdom into the narrative of your life. Even if you don't remember your dreams, they're working for you, weaving the threads of your learning into the fabric of your unconscious mind. Fact 20 explores the long-term architectural changes that occur in your brain with consistent sleep learning. Longitudinal studies using diffusion tensor imaging, a technique that maps the brain's white matter connections, have shown that consistent learning practices over months and years lead to measurable increases in white matter integrity and connectivity. The corpus callosum, which connects your brain's hemispheres, becomes more robust. The arcuate fasciculus, which connects language areas, strengthens. The uncinate fasciculus, linking emotional and memory centers, becomes more efficient. These aren't temporary changes, they're structural improvements that compound over time. Research from the Karolinska Institute has demonstrated that adults who engage in consistent learning practices show brain structures more similar to younger adults than to their age-matched peers. With each night of sleep learning, you're not just acquiring information, you're building a younger, more connected, more integrated brain. Fact 21 brings us to perhaps the most profound truth of all: the relationship between sleep learning and purpose. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex, a region associated with value-based decision-making and sense of meaning, shows unique activity patterns during sleep. Studies have found that when people reflect on personally meaningful content before sleep, this region shows enhanced activity during subsequent sleep stages, and participants report greater sense of purpose and direction upon waking. When you make sleep learning a practice, when you consistently fall asleep to content aligned with your values and aspirations, you're not just learning skills or facts. You're reinforcing at the deepest neural level what matters to you. You're literally sleeping yourself into alignment with your purpose. Each night becomes a reaffirmation of who you are and who you're becoming, encoded not in mere words or thoughts, but in the physical architecture of your brain, in the patterns of your neurons, in the very structure of your being. As you rest in these deep hours, your brain continues its miraculous work, preparing you not just for another day but for a life transformed. Let us explore the final layers of this nightly alchemy, where science and sleep create something approaching magic. Fact 22 introduces us to melatonin, the conductor of your circadian orchestra. Secreted by the pineal gland deep in your brain, melatonin does far more than make you sleepy. Research from the University of Texas has revealed that melatonin is a powerful antioxidant that protects your neurons from oxidative stress during the metabolic activity of learning. It also modulates the activity of your hippocampus, making it more receptive to memory consolidation. But here's what's particularly fascinating. Melatonin levels peak during the hours of darkness, and this peak coincides with optimal memory processing windows. When you establish a consistent sleep schedule and fall asleep to enriching content during these peak melatonin hours, typically between 2 and 4 a.m., you're working in perfect harmony with your brain's natural chemistry. Your learning isn't fighting against your biology, it's flowing with it, supported by every molecule your body produces. Fact 23 reveals the extraordinary role of the thalamus, a walnut-sized structure that acts as the relay station for nearly all sensory information entering your brain. During waking hours, the thalamus sends a constant stream of sensory data to your cortex. But during sleep, particularly during slow-wave sleep, the thalamus doesn't shut down. It changes its filtering strategy. Studies using single-cell recordings have shown that the thalamus during sleep selectively gates information, allowing certain patterns through while blocking others. This is why you can sleep through routine sounds but wake to your name or a baby's cry. When you provide meaningful auditory content during sleep, the thalamus evaluates it for significance. Content that resonates with your values, goals, and emotional needs is more likely to be passed through to your cortex for processing. Your brain, even in sleep, remains exquisitely attuned to what matters to you. You're not passively absorbing, you're actively selecting wisdom that serves your highest growth. Fact 24 brings us to the concept of sleep-dependent insight, famously demonstrated in a study where participants learned a complex number reduction task. Those who slept after learning were 3 times more likely to discover a hidden shortcut than those who stayed awake. But here's what's remarkable. They reported the insight as spontaneous, not as something they consciously worked toward. Sleep, particularly REM sleep, allows your brain to make what neuroscientists call distant associations, connections between concepts that seem unrelated on the surface. The reduced norepinephrine during REM creates a neurochemical environment where your brain can explore unusual connections without the constraints of logical, linear thinking. When you listen to varied wisdom and ideas before and during sleep, you're providing diverse raw materials for these distant associations. You're quite literally giving yourself the ingredients for breakthrough insights, those aha moments that feel like gifts from your unconscious mind, because that's exactly what they are. Fact 25 explores the profound impact of sleep on emotional regulation, mediated by the intricate connection between your amygdala and prefrontal cortex. During waking hours, especially under stress, the amygdala can become hyperactive, triggering anxiety and emotional reactivity. But during sleep, particularly REM sleep, something beautiful happens. The amygdala remains active but communicates with the prefrontal cortex in a uniquely balanced way. Research from Stanford University has shown that this balanced communication during sleep is essential for emotional regulation the following day. Essentially, your brain is practicing emotional control while you sleep. When you layer content about calm, confidence, and emotional wisdom into this natural regulation process, you're training your emotional circuits directly. Studies have found that people who engage in consistent relaxation practices before sleep show up to 40% improvement in emotional regulation measures over 8 weeks. You're not just learning to handle emotions, you're rebuilding the neural architecture that generates emotional responses in the first place. Fact 26 illuminates the role of GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, your brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. While excitatory neurotransmitters like glutamate activate neurons, GABA quiets them, and this quieting is absolutely essential for learning. During sleep, GABA helps orchestrate the precise timing of neural oscillations, ensuring that different brain regions synchronize their activity. Think of GABA as the conductor's baton, creating moments of silence between the notes that allow the symphony to be music rather than noise. Research from Johns Hopkins has shown that GABA levels increase during slow-wave sleep and are essential for memory consolidation. When you fall asleep in a state of deep relaxation, the kind induced by calming, meaningful content, your brain produces optimal GABA levels. You're creating the perfect neurochemical environment for information to be carefully precisely, beautifully integrated into your existing knowledge. Every moment of peaceful sleep is a moment of perfect neural timing, where learning happens with elegant precision. Fact 27 reveals something about the relationship between sleep learning and self-efficacy, your belief in your own capability. The anterior cingulate cortex, which is involved in effort-based decision-making and perseverance, shows enhanced connectivity with motivation centers during sleep. Research from Columbia University has demonstrated that when people mentally rehearse challenging tasks during sleep, they show increased self-efficacy and improved performance when actually attempting those tasks while awake. But this works for more than just specific skills. It works for identity itself. When you listen to content about confidence, capability, and personal power during sleep, you're strengthening the neural networks that underlie self-belief. Your brain is literally rewiring itself to see you as capable. Studies in sports psychology have shown that mental rehearsal during sleep can improve performance as much as physical practice. You're not just learning about confidence, you're becoming confident, one night of neural rehearsal at a time. Fact 28 explores the concept of sleep-dependent perceptual learning, your ability to improve at perceiving and interpreting sensory information through sleep alone. Studies have shown that texture discrimination, visual pattern recognition, and even auditory processing improve after sleep without any additional waking practice. The visual cortex and auditory cortex actively replay and refine sensory experiences during sleep, particularly during both slow-wave and REM sleep. But this perceptual learning extends beyond the senses. It includes your perception of yourself, your circumstances, and your possibilities. When you consistently expose yourself to empowering perspectives and reframed narratives during sleep, your brain practices perceiving reality through that lens. Research from the University of Arizona has shown that perceptual framing established during sleep states can influence waking perception for hours or even days. You're training yourself to see the world, and yourself, through the eyes of wisdom, possibility, and growth. Fact 29 brings us to the relationship between sleep and what neuroscientists call default mode network integration. The default mode network, which includes the medial prefrontal cortex, posterior cingulate cortex, and angular gyrus, is most active when you're not focused on the external world, during daydreaming, mind-wandering, and sleep. This network is crucial for self-referential thinking, autobiographical memory, and envisioning the future. During sleep, the default mode network doesn't rest, it reorganizes. It integrates new experiences into your life narrative, updates your sense of self, and rehearses possible futures. Research from Yale University has found that the default mode network during sleep is particularly active when processing personally meaningful information. When you fall asleep to content about personal growth, life purpose, and values, you're providing high-quality material for this narrative integration. Your brain isn't just storing facts, it's weaving wisdom into the ongoing story of who you are and who you're becoming. Fact 30 illuminates the beautiful connection between sleep learning and longevity. Research from multiple institutions, including the University of California, San Francisco, has demonstrated that chronic poor sleep accelerates cognitive aging and increases risk for neurodegenerative diseases. Conversely, quality sleep is associated with preserved cognitive function well into advanced age. But it's not just about avoiding decline, it's about promoting growth. Studies have shown that people who engage in lifelong learning show greater cognitive reserve and resilience against age-related changes. When you combine quality sleep with consistent learning, you're creating a powerful synergy. Each night of peaceful, learning-enriched sleep is an investment in your cognitive future. You're not just maintaining your brain, you're actively promoting its health, resilience, and vitality for decades to come. The wisdom you absorb tonight is protection for your tomorrow, and for all the tomorrows that follow. Fact 31 brings us to the most essential truth of all: the cumulative power of presence and intention. While all the neuroscience is real and important, there's something equally powerful happening that exists beyond molecules and neurons. By choosing to fall asleep to wisdom, by making this a sacred practice, by treating your sleep as an opportunity for growth rather than merely rest, you're setting an intention that reverberates through every level of your being. Intention itself has measurable effects on brain activity, as demonstrated by research in contemplative neuroscience. When you approach sleep learning with conscious awareness and genuine desire for growth, your brain responds differently than when you passively hear sounds. You're not a passive recipient, you're an active participant in your own transformation. Every night you choose growth. Every night you choose wisdom. And the brain you're building through these choices is a brain aligned with your deepest values and highest potential. As this journey through the night begins to approach its completion, know that you are not the same person who began this rest. At every level, molecular, cellular, neural, mental, emotional, spiritual, transformation has occurred. Fact 32 marks our crossing into the second half of this journey, and it brings us to the concept of sleep spindles and intelligence. These remarkable bursts of brain activity, lasting just half a second to 2 seconds, occur predominantly during stage 2 sleep. But research from the University of California, Berkeley has revealed something extraordinary. The number and quality of sleep spindles a person produces correlates with measures of fluid intelligence, the ability to solve novel problems and think abstractly. More remarkably, studies have shown that sleep spindle density can increase with practice. People who engage in regular learning before sleep show progressive increases in spindle production over weeks and months. This means your brain is literally becoming more intelligent with each night of learning-enriched sleep. The spindles you're producing right now, in this very moment, are markers of your brain optimizing itself, becoming more capable of abstract thought, pattern recognition, and creative problem solving. You're not just learning, you're upgrading your fundamental cognitive capacity. Fact 33 reveals the profound relationship between sleep and the consolidation of what psychologists call procedural knowledge, the kind of knowing that's expressed through doing rather than telling. This includes not just physical skills like playing an instrument, but also social skills, emotional responses, and ways of being in the world. The cerebellum and motor cortex show remarkable activity during stage 2 sleep, replaying motor sequences and refining them. But research from the Max Planck Institute has shown that this same consolidation process applies to emotional and social procedures. When you listen to content about how to respond to stress, how to engage with others compassionately, or how to embody confidence, your brain treats these as procedural skills to be consolidated. You're not just learning about these ways of being, you're literally practicing them at the neural level, creating the motor and emotional programs that will run automatically when you need them. Each night, you're rehearsing the person you want to become until that person becomes simply who you are. Fact 34 takes us into the realm of what neuroscientists call systems consolidation, the gradual process by which memories become independent of the hippocampus and stabilize in the neocortex. This process doesn't happen in a single night. It unfolds over weeks, months, even years. Each night of sleep contributes to this gradual migration of knowledge from temporary to permanent storage, from effortful recall to automatic knowing. Studies using longitudinal brain imaging have shown that memories for skills and knowledge that receive regular reinforcement during sleep become progressively more stable and resistant to interference. When you make sleep learning a consistent practice, you're not just learning new things, you're ensuring that what you learn becomes a permanent part of your cognitive architecture. The wisdom you absorb isn't just for next week or next month. It's for the rest of your life, woven into the very fabric of who you are at the neural level. Fact 35 illuminates the fascinating connection between sleep learning and what researchers call memory tagging. During waking experiences, particularly those with emotional significance, your brain marks certain information with molecular tags, literally proteins that attach to synapses, indicating this is important, consolidate this. During sleep, your brain preferentially consolidates tagged memories. But here's what's remarkable. Research from New York University has shown that the emotional and motivational state you're in when you fall asleep influences which memories get prioritized for consolidation. When you fall asleep in a state of peace, filled with content about growth and wisdom, your brain tags this information as important. You're essentially telling your brain, this matters. Make this permanent. Integrate this deeply. Your emotional state during sleep isn't incidental. It's a powerful signal that directs your brain's overnight organization efforts. Fact 36 explores the beautiful concept of sleep-dependent memory differentiation. Your brain's ability to distinguish between similar experiences and extract unique features. During waking hours, similar experiences can blur together. But during sleep, particularly during slow-wave sleep, your brain actively works to differentiate similar memories, identifying what makes each unique. Research published in Nature Communications has shown that this differentiation process is crucial for pattern learning and skill acquisition. When you expose yourself to varied perspectives and ideas during sleep, different approaches to challenges, different ways of thinking, different strategies for growth, your brain doesn't just jumble them together. It carefully analyzes and differentiates them, extracting the unique value from each. You're building a richly textured understanding, where you can draw on exactly the right wisdom for exactly the right situation. Your knowledge becomes flexible, nuanced, and precisely applicable. Fact 37 reveals something profound about the relationship between sleep and what neuroscientists call memory interference. The phenomenon where learning new information can temporarily disrupt access to related old information. During waking hours, interference is a constant challenge. But during sleep, particularly during slow-wave sleep, your brain reorganizes memories in a way that actually reduces interference. Studies from the University of York have shown that sleep facilitates the integration of new and old memories without competition. This means that the wisdom you absorb during sleep doesn't override or conflict with your existing knowledge. It integrates with it, creating a more comprehensive, more coherent understanding. You're not replacing who you were. You're expanding into who you're becoming, incorporating new wisdom while honoring everything valuable you've already learned. Fact 38 brings us to the emerging understanding of sleep's role in what researchers call gist extraction. Your ability to capture the essential meaning of experiences rather than just specific details. While the hippocampus tends to encode specific details, the neocortex specializes in extracting general principles and patterns. During sleep, information transfers from hippocampus to neocortex, and in the process, your brain distills experiences down to their essence. Research from Northwestern University has shown that this gist extraction is particularly active during stage 2 and REM sleep. When you listen to rich, meaningful content before and during sleep, your brain doesn't just memorize the specific words. It extracts the underlying wisdom, the core principles, the essential truths. You wake up not with a head full of facts, but with a heart full of understanding. The wisdom becomes part of your intuitive knowing, accessible not through effortful recall but through natural insight. Fact 39 brings us to perhaps the most beautiful truth we've encountered yet: the concept of sleep as a restorative space for the self. Beyond all the mechanisms and processes, beyond neurons and neurotransmitters, sleep offers something precious: a nightly return to yourself, a space where the demands of the external world fade and your authentic self can emerge, grow, and flourish. Research in contemplative neuroscience has shown that the brain during sleep engages in self-referential processing, thinking about who you are, who you want to be, and what matters most to you. When you fill this sacred space with wisdom, with love, with truth, you're nourishing the deepest part of yourself. You're creating a relationship with your own consciousness that's based on care, growth, and reverence. Each night becomes a homecoming to yourself, and each morning, you wake up more deeply rooted in who you truly are. As we continue through this transformative night, we discover how all these processes, the neural, the chemical, the electrical, weave together into something greater than their sum. Here, in this synthesis, the true magic reveals itself. Fact 40 brings us to the concept of neural synchronization, the coordinated firing of neurons across different brain regions. During waking hours, different parts of your brain often work somewhat independently. But during sleep, particularly during slow-wave sleep, something extraordinary happens. Neurons across vast distances of your brain begin to fire in synchrony, creating waves of coordinated activity that sweep across your cortex. Research from the University of Wisconsin has shown that this synchronization is essential for transferring information between brain regions and integrating knowledge into coherent understanding. When you provide meaningful content during sleep, this synchronized activity literally carries that information throughout your entire brain. Wisdom doesn't stay localized, it becomes distributed, accessible from multiple perspectives and contexts. You're building knowledge that's woven into the entire fabric of your mind, available wherever and whenever you need it. Fact 41 explores something remarkable: the relationship between sleep and immune learning. Your immune system, like your nervous system, has a form of memory, the ability to recognize and respond more effectively to threats it's encountered before. Recent research from the University of Tübingen has discovered that sleep, particularly deep sleep, is crucial for forming these immune memories. The same molecular pathways that consolidate neural memories also strengthen immune memories. But there's a deeper connection. The immune system communicates with the brain through signaling molecules called cytokines, and these signals influence memory consolidation. When you sleep in a state of deep relaxation and peace, you reduce inflammatory cytokine production and promote anti-inflammatory signals. This creates an optimal environment for both immune and neural learning. You're healing and growing at every level simultaneously, your body learning to protect itself while your mind learns to express itself more fully. Fact 42 illuminates the process of myelination during sleep, the formation of the fatty sheath that insulates neural pathways and makes signals travel faster. Oligodendrocytes, the cells that produce myelin, are most active during sleep. Studies have shown that skills and knowledge that are rehearsed or consolidated during sleep show increased myelination of the associated neural pathways. This is why repeated practice over multiple nights is so powerful. Each night adds another layer of myelin, making those pathways progressively faster and more efficient. When you consistently fall asleep to wisdom-filled content, you're not just strengthening synapses, you're literally wrapping your neurons in insulation that makes wise thoughts and behaviors fire more quickly and automatically. The neural highways for wisdom become smoother, faster, easier to travel. What once required effort becomes effortless. Fact 43 reveals sleep's profound role in metacognition, your ability to think about your own thinking, to be aware of what you know and what you don't know. The anterior prefrontal cortex, which is uniquely developed in humans and supports metacognitive awareness, shows specific patterns of activity during sleep. Studies from University College London have found that sleep enhances metacognitive accuracy, your ability to assess your own knowledge correctly. But more than this, sleep allows your brain to reorganize its understanding of its own capabilities. When you consistently expose yourself to empowering content during sleep, you're literally updating your brain's model of itself. You're teaching your metacognitive systems that you are capable, that you are growing, that you can learn and change. This isn't just positive thinking, it's physically updating the neural circuits that monitor and assess your own abilities. Fact 44 takes us into the realm of predictive processing, the brain's constant effort to predict what will happen next based on past experience. During waking hours, your brain generates predictions about sensory input, social interactions, and your own capabilities. During sleep, these predictive models are updated and refined based on recent experiences. Research from the University of Cambridge has shown that sleep-dependent updating of predictive models is crucial for adaptive behavior. When you listen to content about positive outcomes, effective strategies, and successful navigation of challenges during sleep, you're training your brain's predictive systems to anticipate success. Your brain begins to predict that you'll handle challenges well, that you'll grow from experiences, that you'll find your way. These predictions become self-fulfilling, not through magic but through the way predictions shape attention, interpretation, and action. Fact 45 brings us to the integration of multiple memory systems during sleep. You have several types of memory: episodic, events; semantic, facts; procedural, skills; and emotional, each supported by different neural structures. During waking hours, these systems often operate somewhat independently. But during sleep, particularly during the transitions between sleep stages, these systems communicate and integrate. The hippocampus talks to the amygdala, which talks to the striatum, which talks to the cortex, in an intricate dance of information exchange. Research from Johns Hopkins has shown that this cross-system integration is what transforms isolated experiences into integrated wisdom. When you provide rich, multifaceted content during sleep, content that engages facts and emotions, principles and examples, ideas and actions, you're facilitating this natural integration. Your learning becomes whole brain, whole person, whole life. And fact 46 reveals perhaps the most empowering truth of this section: the concept of sleep-dependent self-authorship. Throughout your life, you're constantly creating and revising your personal narrative, the story of who you are, where you've been, and where you're going. Research in narrative psychology has shown that this self-story profoundly influences your choices, emotions, and life trajectory. During sleep, the default mode network actively works on this narrative, integrating new experiences into your life story. But here's what's powerful: you have agency in this process. When you fall asleep to content that reflects the story you want to live, a story of growth, resilience, wisdom, and purpose, you're providing material for your brain's narrative construction. You're literally co-authoring your life story with your unconscious mind. Each night, you're writing the next chapter, and with intention and consistency, you're ensuring it's a story worth living, a story that calls forth the highest version of yourself. Fact 47 brings us to the fascinating realm of sleep-dependent pattern completion. During waking hours, your brain often encounters partial information, incomplete patterns, fragmented experiences, pieces of puzzles. During sleep, particularly during sharp wave ripples in the hippocampus, your brain actively works to complete these patterns. Research from University College London has shown that the brain during sleep will spontaneously fill in missing elements of memories based on related knowledge and past experience. This isn't about creating false memories, it's about extracting meaning from partial information. When you listen to wisdom and principles during sleep, your brain uses this pattern completion process to apply those principles to your own life experiences. You don't just learn the principle abstractly, your brain automatically connects it to situations where it's relevant. The wisdom becomes personalized, contextual, immediately applicable to your unique life. Fact 48 illuminates something beautiful about the relationship between sleep and habit loops. Neuroscientist and Graybiel discovered that habits are encoded in the striatum as chunked sequences, neurological shortcuts where a cue triggers an entire routine without conscious thought. During sleep, particularly during stage 2, the striatum shows rhythmic activity that replays and refines these habitual sequences. But here's what's empowering. Research from MIT has demonstrated that this same consolidation process can build new, positive habit loops. When you listen to content about desired routines and behaviors during sleep, morning rituals, stress responses, productivity patterns, your striatum begins encoding these as potential habit loops. The neural groundwork for new habits is laid during sleep. When you later encounter the relevant cue while awake, the desired behavior flows more naturally because the neural pathway has already been rehearsed hundreds of times during your sleeping hours. You're programming positive patterns directly into your brain's autopilot system. Fact 49 explores the remarkable connection between sleep and the consolidation of implicit learning, knowledge that you can't consciously articulate but that nevertheless guides your behavior. This includes intuitions, gut feelings, and the subtle recognition of patterns that you couldn't explicitly describe. The basal ganglia and cerebellum, which support implicit learning, show continued activity during sleep, processing statistical regularities and probabilistic patterns from your experiences. Studies from Carnegie Mellon have demonstrated that implicit learning consolidates primarily during sleep, and this consolidation happens more effectively than explicit learning in some contexts. When you listen to content during sleep, especially content that includes examples, stories, and varied perspectives rather than just abstract rules, your brain extracts implicit patterns about how to navigate life effectively. You develop what might be called wisdom intuition, a felt sense of what's right, what's true, what's aligned, that operates faster than conscious thought and guides you reliably even when you can't explain why. Fact 50 brings us to the concept of sleep-dependent fear extinction and anxiety reduction. The amygdala, your brain's fear center, forms emotional memories that can persist for years. But during sleep, particularly during REM sleep with its unique neurochemical profile, fear memories can be processed and their emotional intensity reduced. Research from Rutgers University has shown that REM sleep is crucial for emotional memory reconsolidation, the process by which emotional memories are updated and their charge reduced. When you combine this natural anxiety reduction process with calming content about safety, capability, and resilience, you're actively rewriting your emotional learning. Old fears lose their grip, anxiety responses soften. Your nervous system learns that you are fundamentally safe and capable. Studies have found that consistent exposure to calming content during sleep can reduce baseline anxiety levels by up to 30% over several weeks. You're not just managing anxiety, you're dissolving it at its neurological roots. Fact 51 reveals something profound about sleep and what neuroscientists call value-based decision-making. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex and orbitofrontal cortex, which integrate emotional and cognitive information to guide decisions based on your values, show specific activity patterns during sleep. These regions are essentially rehearsing decision-making processes, simulating choices and their outcomes. Research from MIT has demonstrated that sleep strengthens the connection between abstract values and concrete actions. When you fall asleep reflecting on your deepest values, what truly matters to you, what kind of person you want to be, what impact you want to have, and when you absorb content aligned with those values, your brain literally strengthens the neural pathways that translate values into behavior. The gap between who you want to be and who you are in daily life begins to close, not through willpower but through neural integration. Your actions naturally align with your values because your brain has practiced that alignment hundreds of times during sleep. Fact 52 brings us to the beautiful concept of sleep as pruning and growth in balance. Throughout the day, your brain creates new synaptic connections in response to experiences, a process called synaptogenesis. But if this growth continued unchecked, your brain would become overwhelmed with connections. During sleep, particularly during slow-wave sleep, your brain engages in synaptic pruning, selectively weakening connections that are less useful while preserving and strengthening the most valuable ones. Research from the University of Wisconsin has shown that this pruning is not indiscriminate. It's intelligent, preserving connections associated with meaning, emotion, and repeated activation. When you fall asleep with content that's meaningful to you, emotionally resonant, and aligned with your growth, you're marking those neural connections as valuable. Keep these. Your brain's nightly pruning process becomes a sculptor's tool, removing the excess to reveal the masterpiece within, the essential you, the wise you, the fully expressed you. Fact 53 brings us to the remarkable discovery of sleep-dependent enhancement of divergent thinking, the ability to generate multiple creative solutions to a problem. While convergent thinking narrows possibilities to find the right answer, divergent thinking expands possibilities to explore many potential answers. Research from the University of California, San Diego has shown that REM sleep dramatically enhances divergent thinking ability, with people showing up to 60% improvement on creative tasks after REM-rich sleep. The reason lies in the unique connectivity patterns during REM. Distant brain regions communicate in ways they don't during waking hours, allowing unusual associations to form. When you fall asleep after absorbing rich, varied content, you're providing your brain with diverse conceptual building blocks for this creative recombination. You're not just learning specific ideas, you're expanding your capacity to generate entirely new ideas, to see possibilities others miss, to imagine solutions that don't yet exist. Fact 54 takes us into the fascinating realm of sleep and time perception. The hippocampus doesn't just process spatial memories, it also encodes temporal sequences, the order in which events occur. During sleep, particularly during sharp-wave ripples, the hippocampus replays temporal sequences and can even play them backward or at altered speeds. This temporal flexibility during sleep is crucial for understanding cause and effect, for learning from experience. Research from Columbia University has shown that sleep enhances your ability to understand temporal relationships and predict future events based on past patterns. When you absorb content about personal growth trajectories, about how small actions compound into significant change, about patience and process, your brain practices understanding time in a wiser way. You develop what might be called temporal wisdom, an intuitive understanding that change takes time, that consistency matters more than intensity, that the journey is the destination. Fact 55 explores the beautiful connection between sleep learning and what researchers call affective forecasting, your ability to predict how you'll feel in future situations. The orbitofrontal cortex and ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which support affective forecasting, are active during sleep and process emotional information from recent experiences. Studies from Harvard have shown that people often mispredict their emotional responses, expecting more intense and longer-lasting emotions than they actually experience. But sleep improves affective forecasting accuracy. When you expose yourself to content about resilience, emotional regulation, and the impermanence of difficult emotions during sleep, you're calibrating your forecasting system more accurately. You begin to trust that you can handle challenges, that difficult emotions will pass, that you're more resilient than you fear. This trust isn't blind optimism. It's neurologically grounded confidence in your own capacity to navigate life's ups and downs. Fact 56 reveals something remarkable about sleep and linguistic processing. Even during deep sleep, your brain's language networks remain surprisingly active, processing semantic relationships and strengthening vocabulary networks. Studies using event-related potentials have shown that the brain responds to meaningful words during sleep differently than to nonsense words, indicating ongoing semantic processing. Research from the University of Zurich demonstrated that people exposed to foreign vocabulary words during slow-wave sleep showed better retention of word concept associations. When you listen to enriching content with precise, meaningful language during sleep, you're not just absorbing ideas, you're expanding your internal vocabulary for thinking about yourself and the world. You develop richer language for describing your experiences, more nuanced concepts for understanding your emotions, more sophisticated frameworks for thinking about growth and meaning. Language shapes thought, and by enriching your linguistic resources during sleep, you're literally expanding the boundaries of what you can think and who you can become. Fact 57 brings us to the emerging understanding of sleep's role in consolidating moral and ethical reasoning. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex and posterior cingulate cortex, involved in moral decision-making, show activity during sleep that suggests ongoing processing of ethical information. Studies from Duke University have found that sleep enhances moral reasoning ability and increases prosocial behavior. But there's something more subtle happening. During sleep, your brain integrates moral principles with emotional understanding and personal experience, transforming abstract ethics into embodied wisdom. When you expose yourself to content about kindness, integrity, courage, and compassion during sleep, you're not just learning moral rules, you're building a moral intuition, a felt sense of right action that operates automatically. You become someone who naturally chooses the path of integrity not because they're following rules, but because that path has become encoded as who they are. Fact 58 reveals a truth that encompasses all we've explored. Sleep learning is fundamentally about alignment, bringing your conscious intentions and unconscious processes into harmony. During waking hours, there's often a gap between what you consciously want and what you unconsciously do. Your conscious mind sets goals, your unconscious mind runs habits. Your conscious self aspires, your unconscious self reacts. But during sleep, particularly when you intentionally fill that time with content aligned with your highest values and deepest aspirations, something beautiful happens. The conscious and unconscious begin to speak the same language, work toward the same goals, embody the same values. Research in consciousness studies has shown that this alignment is the essence of psychological well-being and authentic self-expression. You're not at war with yourself. You're unified, integrated whole. Every thought, feeling, and action flows from the same source, your authentic values-aligned self. This is the ultimate gift of sleep learning. Not just knowledge, not just skills, but integration, alignment, and the profound peace that comes from being whole. We have traveled together through the deep territories of sleep and learning, through neurons and networks, through science and soul. Now, as we approach the completion of this journey, let us gather the final pearls of wisdom that will carry you forward into all your nights and days to come. Fact 59 brings us to the beautiful concept of sleep as consolidation of meaning. Throughout all we've discussed, the mechanisms, the molecules, the neural pathways, there's been an underlying thread. Your brain during sleep doesn't just store information, it extracts meaning. The angular gyrus and posterior cingulate cortex, regions involved in semantic integration and personal significance, show heightened activity during sleep. Research from the Max Planck Institute has demonstrated that sleep preferentially consolidates information that's meaningful rather than merely memorable. Your brain is asking during sleep, what does this mean? How does this matter? Why is this significant? When you provide content rich with meaning, purpose, and values during sleep, you're speaking directly to this meaning-making process. You're not just filling your mind with facts. You're constructing a meaningful life, one night of wisdom-filled sleep at a time. Fact 60 illuminates something profound about sleep and the dissolution of the ego. During certain stages of sleep, particularly deep slow-wave sleep, activity in the default mode network's self-referential hubs decreases significantly. The constant narrative of I, me, mine that dominates waking consciousness becomes quieter. Research from Yale has shown that this temporary dissolution of rigid self-boundaries is associated with enhanced creativity, reduced anxiety, and greater sense of connection. When you fall asleep with content that emphasizes interconnection, that points beyond the small self to something larger, that speaks of unity and belonging, you're working with this natural dissolving process. You're building a sense of self that's spacious rather than constricted, connected rather than isolated, flowing rather than fixed. You wake up feeling less trapped in your own perspective, more able to connect with others, more at home in the world. Fact 61 brings us to the concept of sleep-dependent expertise transfer. The ability to apply skills learned in one domain to entirely different domains. The prefrontal cortex and parietal regions, which support abstract reasoning and analogical thinking, remain active during certain sleep stages. Studies from Northwestern University have shown that sleep enhances your ability to extract general principles from specific examples and apply them broadly. When you learn about resilience through one story, your sleeping brain practices applying that resilience principle to your own challenges. When you absorb wisdom about one type of relationship, your brain generalizes it to all your relationships. You're not learning isolated skills, you're developing transferable wisdom that enriches every aspect of your life. Fact 62 explores the remarkable phenomenon of sleep-induced perspective shifts. Sometimes, a problem that seems insurmountable before sleep feels manageable after rest. This isn't just about being refreshed, it's about actual neural reorganization. The parahippocampal cortex and retrosplenial cortex, involved in contextual understanding, show activity during sleep that suggests ongoing recontextualization of experiences. Research from the University of York has demonstrated that sleep literally changes how you frame problems, often shifting them from threat to challenge, from impossible to difficult but doable. When you provide content about reframing, growth mindset, and positive perspective during sleep, you're training this recontextualization system. You're teaching your brain to automatically seek empowering interpretations, constructive framings, and possibility-expanding perspectives. Fact 63 reveals something about sleep and the consolidation of personal identity. Your sense of who you are isn't fixed. It's constantly being updated based on your experiences, choices, and the stories you tell about yourself. During sleep, particularly during REM, the medial prefrontal cortex integrates new experiences into your self-concept. Studies from the University of Arizona have shown that sleep is when identity updates occur most readily. When you fall asleep having engaged with content about the person you want to become, your brain begins integrating that aspirational identity into your actual identity. The gap between current self and ideal self narrows not through effortful striving but through natural integration during sleep. You literally wake up as a slightly different person, closer to who you've always wanted to be. Fact 64 brings us to the role of sleep in what psychologists call benefit finding. The ability to identify positive outcomes even in difficult experiences. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex and hippocampus work together during sleep to reprocess challenging memories, often identifying aspects of growth, learning, or meaning that weren't apparent during the original experience. Research from the University of California, Riverside has shown that sleep enhances benefit-finding ability, helping people construct post-traumatic growth narratives. When you combine this natural process with content about resilience, growth through adversity, and the lessons embedded in challenges, you're training your brain to extract value from difficulty. You develop what might be called adversarial wisdom, the capacity to find meaning and growth even in life's hardest moments. Fact 65 illuminates the connection between sleep and what philosophers call practical wisdom, or phronesis, knowing not just what is true, but what to do in specific situations. Unlike theoretical knowledge, practical wisdom requires integrating principles with context, values with circumstances, ideals with reality. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex, orbitofrontal cortex, and anterior cingulate cortex work together during sleep to build these integrative capacities. Studies from the University of Chicago have shown that sleep enhances context-sensitive decision-making. When you absorb varied examples of wisdom in action during sleep, stories of people navigating dilemmas, making difficult choices, balancing competing values, your brain extracts the patterns of practical wisdom. You develop not just knowledge about wisdom, but the embodied capacity to act wisely in the moment, to know what the situation calls for and to respond accordingly. Fact 66 brings us nearly to completion with a truth about sleep and legacy. The superior temporal sulcus and temporoparietal junction, involved in thinking about others' minds and future generations, show activity during sleep, particularly during dreams. Research suggests that during sleep, humans engage in what might be called prospective legacy thinking, imagining how our actions today will affect others tomorrow. When you fall asleep contemplating content about contribution, service, and positive impact, you're activating these legacy-oriented neural networks. You're training your brain to consider not just immediate gratification but long-term significance, not just personal benefit but collective good. You develop what Erik Erikson called generativity, the desire to create, nurture, and contribute something of lasting value. Your actions become guided by a deep consideration of the ripples they create. And finally, fact 67, the completion of our journey together. The most powerful force in sleep learning is love. Love for yourself, the commitment to your own growth and healing. Love for others, the desire to become someone who contributes to their well-being. Love for life itself, the appreciation of the precious gift of consciousness and the opportunity to evolve. When you approach sleep learning as an act of love rather than self-improvement, when you fall asleep feeling grateful for this process rather than pressured by it, something shifts. The ventral tegmental area and nucleus accumbens, regions involved in reward and motivation, respond to self-compassion and authentic care. Research has shown that growth motivated by self-compassion is more sustainable than growth motivated by self-criticism. You don't need to become someone better, you're already enough. Sleep learning is simply about becoming more fully yourself, removing the layers of conditioning, fear, and limitation to reveal the wise, capable, compassionate being who's been there all along. So rest now as these facts settle into the quiet spaces of your mind. Know this: you are exactly where you need to be. Every breath is perfect. Every moment of sleep is transformation. Every night is a gift, to yourself, from yourself, for yourself, and for all those your life touches. You have learned. You have grown. You have become. And tomorrow when you wake, you'll carry all of this forward, not as memories to recall, but as wisdom woven into the fabric of who you are. The journey continues, night after night, dream after dream, one peaceful breath at a time. Rest well. The work is complete. The transformation is ongoing. And you are now and always exactly enough. Closing. Thank you for journeying through these facts with me. May your sleep be deep, your dreams be wise, and your waking be filled with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're growing, evolving, and becoming more fully yourself with each passing night. Sleep well. Wake well. Live well. Please subscribe and like or leave a comment on your favorite part. Thank you.